the Indica Conference on Hindu Arts, Architecture and Artisan Traditions. It's time for the valedictory address. I cannot believe that 2 days have passed just like that at the blink of an eye. Not for a moment have I got bored. Every presentation has been a learning experience. Every talk has been a great learning experience. But now I request Shashikala Anandji to give the valedictory address. But before that, let me introduce Shashikala ji. Shashikala ji is an architect who has researched on the classical Indian science of architecture, Vastu, for over 30 years. She was a student of Sri V. Ganapati Stapati, and from whom she has learned both textual knowledge as well as practical field application. She was part of a team that made the 1991 award-winning film A Shilpi Speaks that explains the traditions of the traditional sculptors in India. She has written several books on Vastu, including the Penguin Guide to Vastu. She has also translated Sri Ganapati Stapati's book on iconometry, Shirpa Chennul, from Tamil into English under the title Pratima Mana Lakshanam. She and her husband, T.V. Anantanarayanan, have been students of yoga and Vedanta for over 30 years and are now mentoring a whole new generation of scholars and practitioners into the wisdom of traditional Indian way of life, arts, crafts, and traditions. Over to you, Shashikala ji.
It's a wonderful opportunity, and Indica has been doing some phenomenal work in restoring some of our great wisdom and knowledge. And thank you, Harikiranji, wherever you are, if you're listening or not, for this wonderful effort. It has been a very enriching and a long journey for me. I went to Sri Ganapati Stapati when I was 30 years old. And I have been on this journey from then, and I'm 72 now. So you can imagine, I've been on this journey for a very long time. Most importantly, I think I have had a wonderful sort of apprenticeship, Guru Sishya sort of relationship in the Vastu tradition. And let me give you a little bit of data on why I walked on this path. Because that I think is very critical for all the youngsters out there who are wondering whether the tradition is something that has to be shaken off and you walk into a new future, or the tradition is part of our blood. When we were in our 20s, about 24 of us came under the influence of Sri Dharampal. Many of you may know of him, many of you probably have never heard of him. I think he was one of the most critical social scientists of our country. But sidelined very badly by the Congress government, unfortunately. But his work, all the books that he has written and so on, has been a very great inspiration for a lot of us. He challenged us when we were in our 20s. He told us the only way India can move into a creative new future is if we walk backwards into our own science and technology and not run behind the tail of the West, assuming their science and technology is the only way. We took his words very seriously. He told us, walk into the tradition for 10 years. Study with a teacher. And what you study, make it available for the next generation in a way that can make it alive, filled with vitality, so that it can be taken into the future. The biggest problem that we have faced in the last 40, 50 years is that we have relegated all the wisdom of the traditions of India into the mystic area. All has become spirituality and philosophy. We have forgotten that some of the greatest science and technology actually manifests from this country. Those of you who have read Dharampal will know that the earliest creation of making of steel happened in this country. The earliest pure metal extracts, whether it was zinc or copper, was made in this country. We have forgotten that our ancestors were actually technologists. To be able to build a Brihadishwara temple or the grand edifice of Ellora is not just aesthetics. It is extraordinary understanding of material, the behavior of matter. And to understand the behavior of matter, you have to be a scientist. To understand the resonance of stone, to make the gorgeous, the musical pillars, all which are strewn all over the south, required fantastic understanding of stone and the resonant stone. The Vishwakarma have named it in with 3 names: the Pullinga, Strilinga, and the Napumsakalinga Shila. So the very resonant stone was the male stone. The moderate resonant stone was the female stone. And the non-resonant stone was the neutral stone. So they knew where to choose, how to choose a material, how to cut it so that it did not develop hairline cracks, how to transport it in the most comfortable, easy manner. They knew where to apply the pressure, fulcrum. Stapati has told me so many stories about how they used to roll these huge loads of stone by using only a 2 feet metal rod. How they knew exactly where to apply the pressure. And all this is not an accident. It is a remarkable understanding of material. Okay. The next thing is metal. If you look at the great pieces, the Chola bronzes, the quality of the bronze, the quality of that metal that was taken into the crucible, the mixture, because they're all panchaloha, which means the perfect proportions of copper and zinc and tin, little bit of silver and gold. That panchaloha, it's a melting point. The sheen that they managed to create, if you see in Koneri Rajapuram, it's one of the most magnificent sculptures. So these people, our ancestors, are actually great technologists. And today, that is something we need to remember. Not keep calling them artisans or stonemasons as they are being put aside, to be able to locate the dignity and the greatness of a tradition where every part of our built environment was created by the Vishwakarma. Whether you take architecture, whether you take sculpture, whether you take making of metal armaments for warfare or metal implements for agriculture, or you take painting and artwork, or finally jewelry. They are all part of the same community. Manu, Maya, Tvashta, Shilpi, and Vishwagnya. And to me, it was a revelation when I walked into their universe in my 30s. I stayed with them for 10 years. We made the film. We were also planning to make many more sequels, but then everything got relegated because so many other concerns. And one of the biggest concerns is, of course, the lack of recognition and assistance, which I believe is happening today. It has taken 40 years to be able to open this book and allow public to come into the space. In the name of Vastu, many things have got hijacked. And you have practitioners who are only using fear to make you think that you can change your physical environment, which is again a very sad thing, because our tradition has only spoken about energy. How can you harness energy so that it can effectively change your life? And that is precisely what we need to work. How do you energize the environment? And this is both a physical path to wellness and healing, and an upliftment or transformation into a spiritual state of wellness. I believe this external walk and this internal path have to be followed, have to be understood to be able to bring back the splendor of our thought, the Indian thought. And I'm saying deliberately Indian thought because this covers all the Dharma traditions. Whether you take the form of the Buddha, Mahavira, Jina, or you take the form of Mahavishnu, or the form of Chandrasekhara Murti, the proportion is 1:10. Uttama Dashatala. The very quality of the proportion speaks of the height of their achievement. So the concept of the Tala, which many of the others have also spoken about, is a very critical aspect in the way the worship is created, in the way the sculpture, the image, the icon is located in the Garbhagriha. What is the position of a female deity, the position of a male deity? What is the position of Mahavira and Buddha, who are considered to be Avatara Purusha? And Avatara Purusha means human beings who became gods. So where have you to locate them? Everything is rhythmically calculated. And this extraordinary relationship between rhythm, proportion, aesthetics, and the idea of spiritual achievement is a remarkable thing. Stapati used to tell me stories about how in the older times, the Vishwakarma, when they talked about a temple, they would describe it in the name of a raga. So one person will tell the other, look at this Todi I have created, or look at this Bhairavi I have created. And that is very clearly based on the distance between the notes. We are talking about the frequency. So the frequency of sound and the visual rhythm are actually placed in comparison. And this is a very subtle aspect of the Vastu Shastra. I believe the time has come for us not only to work with the scholarly aspects, talk about the kings who, created a temple, but to find out a little bit more about the people who actually designed, who created them with their hands, and their testaments of our past. They are standing there like sentinels, of the grandeur of the past. And to be able to recognize that, the cleverness of the joints, the famous paper joints, where you can put a paper inside and it will go in. All this is part of a technology of a very highly evolved state. Okay. So to be able to bring this back, we need to invite such people into our midst. One of the things I'm trying to do is to bring the Vishwakarma into the building process. Because that understanding of material, which has been handed down from generation to generation, we can't afford to lose it. It is almost an embodied process. And to get to that state of embodied understanding, there is a specific way in which parampara siksha was imparted. So we have to look at it as a complete picture. And parampara siksha, in almost all the traditions, whether you take music, dance, or Shilpa Vastu Shastra, has a unique methodology where simultaneously the indriyas, your sensory perceptions, and your mind are trained. It's not a theoretical thing where your brain is just picking up information. It is where every part of your body has become sensitive. And this training, I think, is very critical. At our center, Ritambara, we are really trying hard to bring back this harmonious, holistic sort of teaching system where people embody their knowledge, where it becomes a part of their everyday life. And that is something we need to carry in the way in which we can honor the tradition. And honoring the tradition means not only honoring the people, but the process. So my request for Indika is to keep up this good work. In Ritambara, we are also honoring the Vishwakarma every year on the Vishwakarma Jayanti. So it would be wonderful if we can join hands and make this into a very powerful cultural evolution, where we bring in the people who hold this knowledge and the capacity for them to express it in a contemporary context, not just as a theoretical piece of information. They have to find the right ways in which they can express through their hands. Once again, what the previous speaker talked about as the poetry in stone, that poetry should not come to an end. I believe it's very important. Like Stapati made me, when I went to him at the age of 30, he asked me, what is your background? So I said, not very much except as being an architect. I know a little bit of Carnatic music and that's about it. He said, go and learn to dance. Then he asked me about my knowledge and I said, I know a little bit of Vedanta, great deep reverence for Bhagavad Gita and so on, because I've been listening to Swami Chinmayananda from when I was a child. So he said, now go and learn to dance. So I simultaneously learned to sculpt and to dance, because the tradition says every aspect of the aesthetic environment has to be internalized. So I believe that we can celebrate this holistic learning and this holistic creation in the world outside if we can join together and make this a team effort. I don't believe any single person can do this anymore. We need to bring many people into this. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Shashikala ji. That was a very, very profound talk. And what actually will remain with me is your sentence that every aspect of aesthetic environment has to be internalized before you even understand what the Sapati tradition, or for that matter, the philosophy behind Indian art. Thank you so much. I think that very, very eloquently sums up the principle behind this conference. And it's that one line saram of this entire conference is this, that every aspect of aesthetic environment has to be internalized. Past 2 days has been an amazing journey for me personally, because these are aspects that I'd read about, and when I actually hear practitioners talking about it, it gives you a whole different perspective. And I thank all the participants, all the scholars, Jaya Jetli ji, who gave the inaugural address, Shashikala Anand ji, who gave the valedictory address, as well as Christian and Arun Yogiraj, who had a wonderful Q&A session where we talked about what is it like to be an actual practitioner of the Stapati tradition. It was truly wonderful, a very creative journey. And as a co-curator of this conference, I don't know if Nagrajji is here. Is Nagrajji here? I guess I can't see him.
No, he is not there.
Okay. So on behalf of Dr. Nagraj Paturi, the curator of this conference, and on my behalf as a co-curator, I am deeply grateful to each and every scholar who presented the papers. I am deeply grateful to the guests who spoke about our traditions so eloquently and gave us so much of food for thought. And most importantly, I would like to thank personally Indica and Sri Harikiran Vadlamaniji for giving me this opportunity to co-curate this conference. And this has been a tremendous learning experience for me, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful. Deeply grateful also to Poti Ramprasad ji and Srinivas ji for all the technical assistance. And I'm, last but not the least, deeply grateful to all the people who registered for this conference and have stayed through. And I've been watching since yesterday. Even after the lunch break, there have been 40 to 50 people listening in, which I think is quite nice for a conference like this. The papers of this conference will be published on Indic Today eventually, and I would request everybody to read the full papers and be in touch with each other. And let's hope that this is the beginning of a movement. As Shashikala Anandji so eloquently said, that this is not something that one person or two people can do. Many hands have to join together to make sure that our glorious traditions and our glorious paramparas have to be respected, and also the science behind it needs to be understood. There is nothing that is, this is a thing of past. Our traditions are living, our traditions are contemporary, and our traditions are very scientific. The sooner we learn this fact, the better it's going to be for all of us. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. Thank you so much.